So this episode is a very different one for me. It isn't going to be filled with lots of actionable tips like I usually have, and here's why. When I went to the National Tutors Conference a few weeks ago, I met a couple of people who were just in tears. Their confidence was on the floor, they had just left the classroom, and they were just feeling really lost. And they also felt very much like an imposter for even thinking they could be a business owner. And I remember some of those feelings. 7 years on, I have been through quite a journey with my feelings, with who I am, my mindset. I'm still on that journey. Mindset is something I'm perpetually working on. So as much as I can share lots of actionable tips with you that might help you launch or grow your business, I can't ignore that we are at one of the points in the year where many teachers are leaving the profession. And as a colleague, I want to share my story in the hope that it resonates with you, even if it only resonates with you and no one else. If you walk away feeling hopeful, then recording this is absolutely worth it. Welcome to the Upgrade Your Education Business podcast. I'm your host, Sumantha, and I'm so pleased you're here. As an education business owner myself and a former teacher, I understand the nuances that only apply to us. So in this podcast, I share fluff-free, tailored and actionable ideas that you can mould to suit your needs. If you'd like to take this conversation further, please do reach out. I would love to meet you. And finally, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a review. That way, you'll be helping me help more people. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy. When I left teaching in 2017, specifically January 2017, I left feeling quite angry. Weak leadership at multiple levels, coupled with things that just shouldn't have been really happening, led to my burnout, which first landed me in hospital and later led me to realise that I just physically couldn't be a classroom teacher anymore. I just couldn't do it. So I was angry because it was the first time I felt I was pushed out of a career. No one actually pushed me out. I resigned, and the head did ask what he could do to keep me, but as I told him, he had his chance and he missed it when it mattered. But the point was, I reached a stage where I had no choice but to leave. I couldn't do it anymore. It wasn't a career move. I didn't leave with a plan. And when I left, I still remember the first day off payroll. I felt really lost. It was really surreal. Being a teacher had become part of my identity. It was a career that I thought would see me to retirement. And yet, here I was in my early 30s, having walked out of a career that was deemed safe and secure. It was something I had to grieve because my future had changed and become uncertain. And I was absolutely gutted to walk away from a job that I truly loved. I love teaching. So that's where I was at. I was in the fortunate position of my husband being in a job where he had all the bills covered, and this was intentional. We knew that I was going to resign long before I did, so we waited until he had passed that 3-month probation with his new job. And that was the day I printed out my resignation letter. So because of that, I wasn't under pressure as such to earn money. Well, partly because of that. I had also spent the 3 months, I think it was 3 months, plus the resignation period, saving up my salary so that we could use it as a buffer if we needed to. Now, when I left, I started tutoring straight away. I had already been kind of advertising, well, I'd signed up to a directory style website, so I'd already lined some people up for when I was leaving. So I started tutoring straight away. I was face-to-face, and as I mentioned, it was a directory style website I used. I didn't straight away go on social media, I didn't create a website, any of that. And it actually brought a really nice stream of clients. I will just really caveat that with saying that it was 2017, the landscape was very different, I was face-to-face, so please don't use that as a template for starting your tutoring business because it may work, it may not. But that's what I did. Now, I wouldn't say at the time that I was running a business because it's not really how I saw it. It just felt like the most logical thing to do because although my husband had a job, I knew from having been made redundant in the past when I was working corporately that you can't take that for granted. So I tutored and I also returned to some freelance business training. I didn't trust that tutoring would actually pay me a salary. Now, this led to my first turning point. Because up to that point, if you had asked me why I burnt out when I was teaching, I would have blamed departmental issues, leadership, the institution, and so on. All of that was true, but a few months of tutoring, I was heading straight towards burnout again because I was saying yes to every single student and training job that came my way. And because I felt guilty for any downtime I had, I also somehow just filled it with work. I felt like I had to be doing something. I found things to do. But this time, I couldn't blame school for burning out, and it forced me to take a look at myself and my habits. This was so empowering because I realised that this time I had caused the burnout, no one else, and that meant I could also change it. And I think that was the first time I actually felt like I had some kind of control. So about 6 months in, I decided I wouldn't teach on Fridays. I compressed my timetable so I could fit everyone in between Monday and Thursday, and 7 years on, I have maintained having Friday to Sunday as being client-free. And with that, I was building up to another milestone. I wasn't keeping much of an eye on numbers at this stage. Sure, I was recording income and my expenditure for my accounts. I was used to doing that, having run a business since I was 22, but that was about it. If someone were to ask me at the time what my turnover was, I wouldn't be able to say. So I sat down with the numbers and I decided to separate my business training income and my tutoring. To my absolute shock, I realised that 6 months in, tutoring had matched my full-time teaching income, and that included UPS and 2 levels of responsibility. I had 2 TLRs. Now, you'd think at this stage I'd be jumping for joy, but actually I freaked out. I thought, this is too good to be true, it can't last. So I operated with that fear-led mindset for probably another 6 months. So essentially, I worked a whole year of not really being ready to acknowledge that I was running a business, one that was stable. It had matched, well, at that point, exceeded my teaching salary. I was doing the business training out of fear. At this point, I didn't actually need it, but it gave me that just in case money. It gave me a bit of security, a backup plan. Now, slowly, that fog started to lift, and I realised my income really was stable. I was shaking off that narrative I had grown up with that running a business wasn't safe. I was actually doing it. I was living it. So I decided it was time to push through the fear and go all in. Well, almost. At my 2-year point, I told the agency that I had very limited availability for business training, and I just increased my day rate, knowing that fewer jobs would come my way. I wasn't ready to tell them I was going to stop as such. Now, I'll just fast forward a touch because I carried on like this for about 3 years, basically until COVID hit. I was consistently fully booked. I had a waiting list, and since I didn't have any pressure to attract more students, I decided to experiment with and master social media marketing for my business. Because my first business was I set it up in 2004, and that was the year Facebook was invented. So I had to find lots of different routes to attract clients, and 20 years on, I don't advertise that business. All my work comes through word of mouth and I don't know, all the directories that I've probably signed up for over the years. But it was at this stage that I thought, social media has really changed. It's no longer this portfolio type platform for businesses. It's no longer just somewhere where you connect with old school friends, for example. It's somewhere where you can really build your business, and I wanted to learn, and I knew the best way to learn was by doing it. So I did. Now, I don't assign very much to luck because, like you, I work bloody hard. But there is one thing I have to assign to a bit of luck. You see, during lockdown, lots of tutors flooded the market. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but they were everywhere. You also had teachers giving back to the community by offering free lessons. So those of us who were relying on it for our livelihoods were getting a bit worried. To top it off, my husband did get made redundant just before lockdown. And when the national exams then got cancelled, my tuition income halved in the space of an hour. But this is the bit where luck really kicked in. Before COVID had hit, I had worked really hard to build my audience. So fortunately, by the next day, within 24 hours, All those spaces were filled, plus I took on a little bit more work. I still kept Friday to Sunday free, but I took on a bit more because we were now reliant on my income. It was also the year I launched my group classes and I invested in coaching for the very first time. Until that point, I had this mindset of just doing everything by myself. Getting help, I think, somehow felt like cheating. And I thought, well, I've done fine without paying for any coaching so far, so I don't need to. Now, to be honest, I don't think I valued myself enough to invest in myself. I certainly didn't value my business enough to invest in it. But here was another turning point. I didn't want to do just fine. I wanted to do better. And I saw a course that seemed to promise a pathway to that. Now, the course wasn't really for me, but it certainly gave me the confidence to keep investing. I absolutely saw the value in removing trial and error and hours of working things out, and I was ready to acknowledge that I was a business owner. And as a business owner, I had to invest in my business for it to grow at a faster rate. It was also the point when I started learning the value of working on my mindset. I suppose it was another aspect of investing in myself. I remember having a chat with someone who recommended a book to me, and I sort of classed these mindset books as self-help books, and I thought, well, I don't really have a problem to solve, so I don't need them. But all of that changed with just 2 books. One was The E-Myth Revisited, which opened my eyes wide to the practical business principles, and another was Blink by Malcolm Gladwell. And that really immersed me in the world of trusting your gut instinct. And that was it. The more I learned through these books, the more I wanted to learn. I saw the transformation in my life and in my business. I could see all the possibilities that these books were opening up, and I wanted to keep going. That phrase, success breeds success, was absolutely true for me. Now, I won't go into what happened next, but in summary, my tuition business now runs itself. I pretty much just show up and teach. I don't really promote it anymore. I get work through historical content, through word of mouth, and I've reduced my hours even more to accommodate Upgrade Your Education business. But what I will talk about are my lessons learned, because I think this is where I can really share things that might help you if you're at the earlier stages of your journey or if you're struggling a little bit. I'll share 5 takeaways. The first thing I'll share is that when you leave teaching, you need to give yourself time to decompress. I know you might be rearing to go with your business, or maybe you have financial responsibilities. You can do all of that while reducing the pressure. You could, for example, get a job elsewhere. Someone I chatted to a while back said how they had got a job at a hairdressing salon as a receptionist, and they loved it. She was earning money in a totally different environment, and she didn't need to do any work outside of working hours. So if you did jump to tutoring, you could sign up to agencies so you could teach and earn money, but without the pressure of attracting clients and just doing all the things that it takes to launch a business. The second thing is that when you feel that fog has lifted, and it will lift, think about what you need and don't be afraid to invest in yourself. You're worth it. One of my biggest regrets was waiting so long before I invested in business support. I could have been so much further. Honestly, I could have been so much further along in my journey if I had. I'm not saying this because I want you to work with me. The most important thing is that you invest in exactly what you need. So if you need guidance on mindset work, maybe that's the direction you go in first. And it's also important that you invest in the right person or service for you, one that really connects with you and inspires you to take action. Action is where the real results happen. My third takeaway is don't be like me and underestimate the power of working on your mindset. I think I was so used to taking formal CPD to make my teaching practice more effective that it didn't even occur to me to focus on my personal development. But once I started, I never stopped. And it has got me through some really, really tough times. It's made me really resilient. My fourth takeaway is that if you're at those beginning stages of business, don't be fooled into thinking that once you have a logo and a website, then you have a business. You have a business when you get your first client. So be kind to yourself and take the fastest and most efficient path to get there. Don't overthink As I mentioned a couple of weeks ago in my episode about group classes, no decision has to be permanent. You can change your mind as many times as you like. And my fifth takeaway is not to compare yourself with other people or get overwhelmed with all the advice that might be flying your way. People give advice, sometimes to be helpful, sometimes because they're selling something, sometimes because of both reasons. I'm in that category. But if you're overwhelmed and you feel like you're always behind, then it defeats the aim. You're not actually gaining benefit from the people who want to help you. You want to feel like you're bubbling with ideas, not feeling the heavy weight of an ever-expanding to-do list. If you feel that way, then disengage with anything that contributes to it just for a while. And the same goes with communities. There are so many Facebook groups and it's tempting to be in all of them, but it can get really noisy. One of the best things I did, I think I did it around 3 years ago, was I took the time to just leave a load of groups and stay in selected groups, ones where I got something out of them, where I enjoyed being in them. So there you have a really condensed view of my journey, but I really wanted to share that and my takeaways because they are things that I really wished I had known when I had left. I think it would have made the journey easier, less stressful. I would have grown faster and I would have grown with more confidence. I would have acknowledged that I was a business owner, that I was running a business so much sooner. Instead, I was too busy pinching myself, thinking, is this real? Have I actually exceeded my income? Well, hang on, I better take on more work because what if this doesn't last? Operating with that fear mindset, that lack mindset, isn't useful. It just leads to more. Just like success breeds success, fear breeds more fear. So even if you've walked away with one thing, or even if this is connected with you and it's brought back some memories, I really hope you've enjoyed taking this journey with me. You'll hear from me on Wednesday, and as always, thank you so much for supporting the podcast. Would you like to take this discussion further? Perhaps you have some questions or you'd like more ideas on tailoring your business. If so, book a free discovery call through the link in the show notes.